I used to chase everything: money, status, possessions, thinking they would fill the emptiness inside me. Every achievement felt good for a moment, then faded like smoke. The more I gained, the heavier I felt. One day, I started letting go: old clothes, toxic habits, endless goals that weren't mine. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was peaceful. I realized happiness had never been hiding in what I owned, but waiting in the space I created by releasing what I didn't need. Minimalism didn't take things away from me, it gave me back my life. When I removed distractions from my life, I began to hear my own thoughts clearly again. For a long time, my life was filled with noise, not the kind that comes from traffic or people talking, but the kind that seeps quietly into your soul. Notifications, endless scrolling, constant comparison, and the pressure to do more, have more, be more. I used to think being busy meant I was living fully, but in truth, I was running away from myself. Every moment was filled with something: music playing in the background, a podcast during a walk, messages blinking on the screen. I didn't realize how afraid I had become of silence. One day, I turned it all off. No phone, no background music, no chatter. Just me and the quiet. At first, it felt unbearable, like the silence was pressing against my chest, asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. But slowly, something beautiful began to happen. The noise in my head started to settle. Thoughts that had been buried under layers of distraction began to rise, clear and calm, like the surface of a still lake. I realized how long it had been since I truly heard myself. The dreams I had ignored, the emotions I had pushed aside, the truths I had been too busy to face. They all came back, softly, patiently, waiting for me to listen. I noticed how the sun felt on my skin, how my breath slowed when I walked without purpose, and how peace wasn't something I had to chase. It was always there, waiting beneath the noise. Removing distractions didn't make my life smaller. It made it deeper. It reminded me that clarity doesn't come from doing more. It comes from being present. Sometimes the most profound answers are already inside us. We just have to create enough silence to hear them. And now, when life starts to get loud again, I remember I don't need to fill every moment. The quiet is not empty. It's full of truth. When I was younger, I thought happiness came in shopping bags. Every sale felt like a little victory: a new pair of shoes, a shiny gadget, another piece of furniture that promised to complete my home. For a few days, I'd feel the rush, that satisfying glow of having something new. But slowly, the feeling would fade, and I'd find myself looking for the next thing, the next spark. My closet grew full, my shelves heavy, yet somehow my heart felt emptier than ever. One day, while cleaning out my overflowing drawers, I found a sweater I hadn't worn in years. It still had the tag on it. I sat there for a long moment, holding it, realizing how much of my life I had traded for things that barely mattered. That night, I made a quiet promise to myself to start needing less. At first, it wasn't easy. Letting go felt strange, almost like losing a part of my identity. But as I donated bags of clothes, sold things I didn't use, and cleared my space, something unexpected happened. The noise inside me began to quiet. My mornings became slower, calmer. My room felt lighter, and so did I. I learned that the joy of owning something is loud but short-lived, like a sparkler that burns bright then disappears. The peace of needing less, though, it's soft, steady, and lasting. It doesn't demand attention. It simply stays, like a gentle breath in the background of your days. Now, when I sit in my small, uncluttered living room with a cup of tea, I feel something I used to chase in all those purchases. Contentment. Not excitement, not thrill, just peace. And I've realized that peace isn't found in getting more. It's in realizing you already have enough. The joy of owning fades with time, but the peace of needing less, that's the kind of joy that stays forever. There was a time when silence felt like failure. When a quiet room seemed to echo with everything I hadn't done, hadn't said, hadn't become. I used to fill every corner of my life with noise, with people, with things I didn't need but thought would make me feel safe. The emptiness terrified me. I'd open my phone just to drown out the stillness, rearrange furniture for no reason, or make plans I didn't really want. Anything to escape that feeling, that hollow pause where I had to face myself. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. Maybe it was the day I sat in a bare room after moving out, surrounded only by sunlight and dust floating in the air. There was nothing to hide behind. No pictures, no sounds, no distractions. Just me in the quiet. And instead of fear, I felt something else. Peace. I realized that emptiness isn't absence. It's space. The kind that lets light in, that lets breath move freely. It's the pause before music begins, the blank canvas before the first brushstroke, the sky before dawn. It's possibility. Now I crave those moments. The calm mornings before the world wakes up, the blank pages in my notebook, the empty corners of my home. They remind me that I don't need to fill everything to feel whole. I don't need constant noise to prove I'm alive. In emptiness, I've learned to listen to the quiet rhythm of my heart, the sound of the wind through the window, the soft hum of a life that doesn't need to rush. I've learned that peace isn't something you chase. It's what's left when you stop running. Empty spaces used to make me anxious. Now they make me feel alive. Because in their stillness, I finally hear the truth. I already have everything I need. There was a time when I thought happiness was something I could buy. A bigger apartment, nicer clothes, the latest phone. Each new thing promised joy, and for a fleeting moment, it almost felt true. But the feeling always faded like mist under the morning sun, leaving behind a quiet emptiness that whispered, maybe just one more thing. And so I kept chasing, filling my shelves, my closet, my days, until there was no space left to breathe. One rainy afternoon, I sat in the middle of my cluttered room, surrounded by things that were supposed to make me happy. But all I felt was heavy. I didn't recognize the person I'd become, someone always busy collecting, yet never content. That day, I packed a single box and decided to start letting go. At first, it was uncomfortable, even painful. Each item held a memory, a reason, an excuse, but the more I released, the lighter I became. Minimalism didn't just clear my space, it cleared my vision. I began to notice the way sunlight touched the floor in the morning, the sound of my own breathing, the warmth of tea in my hands. Simple things I had always overlooked, began to feel sacred.
I realized that I already had everything I needed: a roof over my head, a few people I loved, and moments that made my heart still. Now, my home is quiet but alive. My days are slower but full. I've learned that happiness doesn't come from having more, but from noticing what's already enough. It's in the pause before the next breath, in gratitude whispered before sleep, in knowing that life itself, in all its simple, imperfect beauty, is already a gift. Minimalism didn't take anything away from me. It gave me back what I had lost: peace, presence, and the gentle joy of simply being.
There was a time when I thought having more meant living better. My shelves were lined with books I never opened, my closet filled with clothes that still had tags, and my days crammed with plans that left no room to breathe. I told myself I was building a life, but in truth, I was just building walls, layers of comfort to hide behind. I thought owning things gave me security, that staying busy gave me purpose, that somewhere along the way, my world became crowded and my heart strangely empty. It started to change the day I decided to give something away, a jacket I loved but never wore. The moment I placed it into someone else's hands, I felt a quiet relief, as if the fabric had carried a piece of my heaviness. So I kept going. I cleared drawers, let go of souvenirs, deleted photos that no longer meant anything. Each small act of letting go peeled away a layer of noise, revealing a silence I hadn't felt in years. And in that silence, I began to hear people again. I noticed the way my friends' laughter lingered longer when I wasn't glancing at my phone. I saw how my mother's eyes softened when I sat beside her without rushing to check the time. I began to listen, not just to words, but to pauses, to emotions, to stories hidden between breaths. Life felt slower, but richer. The emptier my space became, the fuller my heart grew. I no longer needed to own things to feel whole. Instead, I found meaning in connection, in shared coffee cups, evening walks, quiet moments of understanding. Letting go didn't make my life smaller, it made it deeper. Now, when I look around, I see fewer things, but more faces. I don't remember the objects I once clung to, but I remember the people I've come closer to, their warmth, their laughter, their love. In learning to let go, I finally learned how to hold on. When I first heard the word minimalism, I thought it meant giving things up: empty rooms, white walls, and owning just one spoon. It sounded like a quiet kind of suffering disguised as enlightenment. But over time, I realized minimalism isn't about having less for the sake of less. It's about making room for more peace, more clarity, more life that feels like your own. I used to chase after things I thought would make me happy: new clothes, shiny gadgets, another chair for a corner that didn't need one. But every purchase seemed to add a layer of noise around me. My home looked full, but I felt empty. One evening, after yet another long day of scrolling through online stores, I looked around and couldn't find a single thing that truly made me feel alive. That was the moment I decided to start letting go, not because I wanted less, but because I wanted more of what mattered. I began with one drawer, then a shelf, then an entire room. Each object I released seemed to whisper something back to me: "You don't need me to be whole." Slowly, space began to appear, not just in my home, but in my head. I could breathe again. Mornings became quiet, but not empty. Evenings became simple, but peaceful. Minimalism, I learned, isn't about counting how many things you own. It's about understanding why you own them. It's about drinking your morning coffee from your favorite cup
and realizing that one cup is enough. It's about saying no to the noise so you can say yes to what feels true. Now, my life feels lighter, not because I have fewer things, but because I finally have room for joy, for connection, for stillness. And in that quiet space, I discovered something I had been missing all along: myself. I used to chase happiness in things, new clothes, shiny gadgets, busy plans. But one quiet morning, with sunlight spilling through the window and coffee warming my hands, I realized it was never lost. Happiness had been waiting all along in the stillness I'd been too busy to notice.